Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching or listening to this, and welcome to Link Up Leaders, your direct link to leaders in supply chain and e-commerce. My name is Lisa Kinski. I'm your producer and co-host, and joined as always by Francois Jaffray. Francois, how are you?
I'm great. Looks like someone had a long 4th of July weekend.
Out of it, dude. It wasn't even necessarily like a long weekend. I stayed in Woodstock the entire weekend. So I had a couple of nights at my parents' place. I had a night at the camper, and then I was out in Dallas yesterday, Georgia, not Texas. And I'm just out of it. I was with, little ones the whole weekend. So I'm just like, man, I don't know what I need. Coffee, I guess. I've been without coffee for like almost 2 weeks now. So I'd prefer to keep it up.
I've been on the chai tea latte.
Yes,
that.
I love those things.
It's been working pretty well.
I think those have a ton of sugar on it, though. So I'm really sorry for turning you on to those. I think they're actually really bad for you, but
oh well, it's one or the other.
Delicious. But yeah, how are you? How was your weekend?
It was amazing. We went to DC, saw some fireworks, stayed at a buddy's house. So it was great. Yeah, no, I can't complain. I think those longer weekends is something that just everyone needs. Everyone sort of looks forward to. So no, it was a great time.
Good. Well, we'll see you in a couple weeks, I guess, whenever you decide to come back. All right. Well, let's go ahead and bring our guest on today. Today, we are joined by Mina Elias, who's clearly been awake much longer and alert than any of us. Mina, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How's it going?
Going well. And I have to tell you, I'm specifically excited to talk to you today because I have seen a couple of your episodes and you keep a big honkin' water bottle with you. And this is what I drink out of. And I'm ready for somebody else to tell friends. Okay,
not as big, but
I've been hollering the hydration, like singing the praises of it. And I'm like ready for somebody else to be like, no, I have the science behind it. You need to drink more water.
I need it. I noticed such a big difference at the gym. I train super intense. I lose so much water. And if I'm not I can tell the couple days, everyone has those days, right? It's the weekend, whatever. I'm not going to carry a water bottle around. And then on those 2 days, I don't drink as much. And I feel so bad on Monday. And I'm like, never again. I'm going to, and so now I keep more inconspicuous bottles in the car. So people, it's hard. I used to carry the jug everywhere, but I'm in LA and it's a lot of walking and stuff. So it just became a little bit inconvenient.
Yeah, and it's hot, I guess, too. And you know what? Now that I think of it, I didn't drink an entire one of these yesterday, and I'm totally off my game today. So I think I screwed myself. I have to have the full gallon every day now, or else I'm just not here. Dang it.
Building healthy habits.
Yeah. No, the body needs it. The muscles love it.
Oh yeah, they absolutely do. Well, tell us, Mina, for anybody who doesn't know you, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you kind of got into the e-com game?
Cool. So basically in 2011, I came to America to study chemical engineering and chemistry. I was born in Egypt, raised in Dubai from when I was 2 till I was 18. Then, came here, went to Connecticut. Bad mistake, big mistake. But I got my bachelor's and my master's in chemical engineering and chemistry. Worked in corporate. I worked in a medical devices company for new product development. I worked in manufacturing for radiant heating and cooling ceilings. Worked as a project manager in construction. So did a bunch of stuff, corporate. And, I started in a very mundane kind of, you have that in new product development, they literally gave me a room and they said, this is your room. That's it. And so I almost felt like I was caged. And then I moved to the next thing, which I thought, maybe I have a little bit more freedom, but then it was a 9 to 5 sitting in front of 2 screens, similar to my current job now. But this one is when you own the business is a lot more exciting. Then I moved to the project engineering and management side of things, and that's when I started really liking it because it was a lot of different stuff all over the place. And then eventually I was like, okay, I'm done being someone else's employee. I want to do things for my own. And I kind of always felt like there's the last company I worked for, I think in one conversation I got them $300,000 in net profit. added on a project.
Wow.
And so I said, man, like if I'm doing this for like someone, why can't I just do it for myself? And but you know, that wasn't what sparked it. The whole thing that was sparked is in 2018 I was on vacation with my parents, and my dad was talking to me, and while I was like scrolling for supplements. I'm a supplement addict, like massive addict. I have like a whole thing cabinet here full of supplements, and I love trying new things. And I was scrolling it, and he's like, dude, you've been on your phone for like 30 minutes. What are you looking for? I'm like, dude, I just can't find the right protein. Like I'm looking for something, you know, a protein that doesn't have like all this like extra stuff, and it's not made from like whey concentrate. He's like, you know, why don't you make your own? I said, yeah, I am trying to, like, I'm trying to like, you know, buy different things and mix them. He's like, no, like, why don't you start a company? And that's kind of the whole conversation sparked from there. And I told him, I was like, it's probably like too expensive, right? It's like $100,000 to start a supplement business. He said, how much does it cost? And, you know, that I didn't have the answer, and I don't like not having answers. So I went and I did research, and I was like, wow, like I can actually source from Amazon raw ingredients for X amount, mix them up, and then like it came up to like $5. And I looked at, you know, packaging. I looked at buying packaging from Amazon. Like that's how I started. I bought gold bags from Amazon. I bought stickers from a print shop, and I bought the ingredients, mixed them at home, put them in the bag. I had an iron and I sealed it, and that was my product. That was my first 40 units that I sold. And so I was like, wow, like I can make them for $5, sell them for $25, $30 on Amazon. Obviously, you know, I did not know anything about entrepreneurship or business or any of those, like, you know, logistics. I just knew, okay, it's cheap and you can sell it for expensive. Sounds like it's a good deal.
Right.
The math seems right.
Yeah.
So I went home and from Egypt, and before I was even home, all the ingredients were at my house. I pre-ordered everything, got there, mixed it, tried it on myself. And the first product that I decided to go with, I'm an MMA fighter, and I train very intensely and I sweat a lot. And so I needed something for that. And I was also on keto, and it was a big pain point for me, because on keto, I was literally like, I would dry scoop chicken broth. I would drink chicken broth, like bone broth, all the time, just to get enough sodium in me, because I'm sweat. Like I think like I used to be at the gym from around like 6 to 9:30, nonstop. You're sweating, and like, you know, there's certain periods when you're going live, you're sweating like 10 times more. Like the mats everyone would be slipping on the mats and stuff. Yeah, like that's how crazy it gets. And so on keto, your body is losing electrolytes even more. So I was like, I need to, you know, come up with a solution that's not dry scooping chicken broth that tastes horrible. and one time I made the mistake of buying like I think pork broth or something, and it was like, or ham, and it was even worse. Ooh. And I was like, I'm done with this. And so that's kind of it you know, pushed me to create my first supplement, which is an electrolyte supplement. And so I did a ton of like research on, you know, all like clinically backed ingredients and all this kind of stuff. And I figured, okay, here's the dosages, here's how much I need. So when I went home, I mixed it and I started using it. And after like 5 days, I was like, okay, wow, like I do feel a difference, but I'm probably biased. It's probably like a placebo. And so I went to my friends at the gym, and I didn't even tell them it's my company. I said, another company trusted me with their new supplement. Don't tell anyone that I gave you this. Just use it and let me know. So they used it and they said, wow, like I feel like way more energized after training. I can work out harder and I don't feel as winded. And I said, okay, cool. Like this is definitely like, you know, it's a thing. So it wasn't just me. And then from there, incorporated the business. And that's when I made my first 40 units. I posted on Facebook about it. And I ended up going to a conference, an MMA, not a conference, an MMA event. It was like a fight. Like, you know, there's people fighting. And I had like a little booth, and then everyone asked me, where can I buy your product? They loved it. You know, I sold 25 units that on my first, you know, my soft launch. And I had no idea what to tell them. Like, where can I buy this? I'm like, I just made this in my house. So I said it's going to be on Amazon soon. And then once I said that out loud, it was like, okay, I have to get it done. And so I went down that rabbit hole and, you know, got on Amazon and then scaled on Amazon. The rest is history.
So when did you officially launch on Amazon?
November 22nd, 2018.
Oh, you know the exact date and everything. Wow. Usually folks are like, 20 something.
No, I incorporated the business October 10th. November 2nd was the MMA event, and then November 22nd was when I was on Amazon. I still remember the first day, and I'm looking at the sales, and I still remember like that was a period where I was going to LA Fitness. I was swimming every morning, and I still remember like I would swim, and then I would get out, and I would really want to get out, after the swim, and grab my phone, and then go sit in the hot tub and like just refresh my sales. Start looking at every single order. Okay, they're from Idaho. Like, okay, why Idaho?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. It was those stages where I was like very obsessive with like everything.
And so, how long were you still making everything at home yourself?
No, I never. I ran all the numbers. I was gonna hire my roommate for $15 an hour to make it at home, because I have my 9-to-5 job. It was more than it was actually like it was 7 to 5, or like 6:15 to like 5. So it was a very long. So I didn't have time at home, but I was about to do that, and then I said, you know what? Let me just take a shot in the dark. I'm gonna message all of the so what I did was I said, okay, where can I get the cheapest and like highest quality raw materials? So I messaged like a bunch of people, and I said, okay, how much can I buy this in bulk? How much is this? How much is this? Just like wholesale, requesting wholesale prices. And then this one guy, I just shot in the dark. I texted, I said, hey, if I give you a formula, can you blend it? It's only like 5 ingredients. He said, yeah, sure, we'll do it. I said, okay, here's the formula. How much? And then it came out cheaper than if, I did it at home. I said, done. I said, what's your minimum? What's your minimum? He said, whatever. I mean, how much do you want? I said, can you do 100? He said, yeah, we'll do 100 units. And I was like, whoa, like, now like all the manufacturers like, I'm sorry, like 3,000 unit minimum and stuff, pay up front and 6 months production time. And this guy like got it done in like 2 weeks, with no minimum. And the funny thing is, I said, okay, let me send you a contract, right? Because when you're beginning, you're trying to sound official, and I like this, like very imposter syndrome at the time. And then I told my dad, I said, can you send me like a contract? He sent me this contract, and I like adjusted the stuff. I had no idea that there was net terms in there, and I sent it to him, and he said, okay, so for the net terms, can we change it to 25 down, net 60? I said, yeah, sure, whatever. And then I called my dad. I said, what is 25 down, net 60
really good deal.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, it just means you pay 25% when he runs the production run, and then you pay 60 days later. I was like, whoa, like this is pretty cool. So right off the bat, super lucky. That manufacturer didn't last. It was too small. A lot of issues. Not enough quality control. I learned a lot. My first like 100 units that I sent to Amazon, because I didn't check the quality of the stuff. The bags were bad, and I had no inspections, nothing. And pretty much if you held the bag like this high and dropped it, it would like explode. And so I had 60 defective units as my first 100 units to Amazon. Yeah.
Wow.
So a lot of mistakes, a lot of lessons, but that's kind of how I made my way into Amazon or e-commerce.
But also a lot of learning. I mean, a big part that I took away from that also is that you spent a lot of time researching and Googling. How much time did you spend talking to the manufacturers for them to give you information?
Oh, a lot. Like, I mean, nonstop. Like, basically, I came from like that kind of background, like engineering background. So it's not like I did anything kind of messy. Everything was always super clean. But I had this massive spreadsheet, and it would be like manufacturer 1, manufacturer 2, manufacturer 3, manufacturer 4, their name, address, and then I would have, okay, their prices, notes on them, like everything, follow-up number 1, follow-up number 2. So I had like this spreadsheet of every single manufacturer, pricing, everything all like laid out. And I was a project manager at the time, so I would never let a day go by without like messaging you, like emailing you, calling you, whatever. And that's how I did it in my corporate job, and that's why I drove the best results. I was like the best performing project manager at the time. And so I just took that and I applied it to my own stuff, and I was like, okay, if one day goes by and they're not giving me the answer that I need, I'm on it. And so whereas people maybe spend like 30, 45 days talking to manufacturers, it took me 7 days to have everything buttoned up, because it's like, I'm pushing the salespeople. I'm like, come on, I need an answer. I need an answer. Okay, who's the decision maker? Can I talk to the decision maker? And yeah, so that's kind of the answer to that.
Wow.
But your supply chain is within the US, right? It's all domestic. Is that right?
Yes. Back then it was. Now a little bit different. Well, I mean, it's slow. There was a slow progression, right? It started off legit. I first bought everything on Amazon. So I was all Amazon, stuff. So all US. Then that manufacturer, just so everyone is clear on this, 99% of all supplement ingredients come from overseas, like China. In the US, we don't manufacture. So supply chain is usually China to like a big reputable wholesaler to the manufacturer, and then manufacturer mixes everything. So it started as everything on Amazon. Then it started as, okay, I can't buy everything from Amazon, it's too expensive. So I went to the manufacturer for the ingredients and the mixing. The labels and everything is US. The bags initially they were also US, and they were stock. But then I'm like, okay, that looks ugly, like a bag with a sticker on it. Let's move to something that's better. So then my packaging shifted to China. And then, so I would source the bags from China, send them straight to the manufacturer. And the next step was then, let's go to containers. With containers, labels was still here. Scoopers were here. The containers were still in China. So I still have like one piece in China. And then, I'm moving now to heat shrink sleeves. So again, it's going to be, everything's in the US except the container is going to be from China, but it's going to give me a little bit more flexibility, because if the container varies a little bit with the heat shrink sleeve, it's going to kind of always look the same. So yeah, it's not all US. There's still like the packaging component, but it's not too bad, because I buy 10,000, 15,000 at a time, and it'll last me like a few months.
There you go.
That is still a complex supply chain, though. In what you were describing, what background did you have? Any background aside from the engineering mindset, which is more of that logical mindset of, if this happens, then this is going to happen, and it's a very easy way to look at supply chain itself, because everything's a link.
Yeah.
But did you have any background in supply chain prior to developing this complex supply chain?
No. Yeah, I mean, no, I didn't have anything. But when we were building like the ceilings, like we would get the copper tubes from one place, the aluminum profiles from another place, the hoses and everything. So I was on top of that, and I always knew like the critical path of like, okay, the hoses take 6 weeks and the aluminums take 4 weeks, but like put a week buffer here. So I kind of worked with like ordering materials, but I definitely did not have and none of that stuff was China. Like there was all like Europe, US, but I did not have like the background of like China. Okay, so with China, it's like you source the stuff. You have to first of all get through the language barrier. You source the stuff. You make sure it's a legitimate place. You have to deal with. First of all, you have to be. Let's be very, very clear. You can't protect your stuff at all. Like there's zero protection there. So many people ask me like, should I make them sign an NDA? I'm like, dude, who's going to enforce it in China? You're going to fly out to China and enforce it? Good luck. So, maybe protection over there. Some people, it'll make them feel better, but I don't think like you can actually do anything. So I had to navigate that, which is like, okay, maybe just don't worry too much about it. Then I have to navigate the inspections. So having them understand all of the specs and all of the stuff that I want, getting it produced, then having the inspection done, and then after that dealing with the freight forwarding and all that stuff. I dealt with freight forwarders before, but it is a little bit more complex especially when you're like sourcing everything yourself, and you have to get like a bond and clear customs and all that stuff, and I'm not familiar with clearing customs for like those things. It's like all new stuff, so it was a little bit tricky. But eventually get it done.
Yeah, I mean, You definitely simplified it. I mean, even with bonds itself, there's, the single entry, or there's the annual customs bond that you could do if you're importing more than 3 imports a year. It just makes sense. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. I find it fascinating when people that have no background in supply chain, it can get a good grasp into a complex like yours, especially with something like supplements.
I just ask someone who does have a good background.
Yeah, and that's a very easy way to learn a lot of very important things. They kind of tell you what you don't have to know too much, what you can maybe outsource or put off to someone else. Just like if you get a customs agent, they can handle pretty much all the customs and port entry for you. Freight forwarder, they're going to handle all the shipping for you. Manufacturer, obviously making all the product for you.
And also it's super easy. Like if you're starting out, to just find me in a conference, and then I think if you have like a notepad out, within like 15, 20 minutes, you can have like a full rundown of everything. Maybe I'm going to miss a detail here or there, but you probably have like 85, 90% of everything that I learned in like 3 years in like 15, 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I highly recommend people do that. And that's like one thing I just did actually with the heat, the heat shrink sleeves. I called up someone who has they have like a really, really big company, and they use it, and pretty much we hopped on the phone, and in like 10 minutes, he's just like, boom, 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 boom. Don't do this, avoid this, check that, do this, do that, done. And in like 15 minutes, he basically like summed up his experience of like, 100, like I think over like 100,000 units worth of experience in this product in like 10, 15 minutes. So I think that's a very, very good way with complex stuff like that. If you don't know how it is, same thing with like P&Ls. I don't know, like, how familiar you guys are with profit and loss statements, but that was kind of like my biggest weakness. It was super daunting. And then I found a guy who's really good. Like we were talking and he's like, yeah, check the P&Ls. I was like, oh, like, do you know about P&Ls? He's like, obviously, dude, like if you don't know P&Ls, like, how do you even know your numbers? I'm like, okay, can I please ask you to spend like 10, 15 minutes explaining it? And he's like, sure, no problem. And, we spent 10, 15 minutes. He opened up a P&L. He explained everything. And, there you go. In like 15 minutes, I kind of got like a crash course from someone who's been doing it for years. And now, like, I know my numbers like super, super well.
That's awesome. I think that's something like some fresh entrepreneurs are always afraid is just to ask somebody who's experienced, because I think everybody's like, oh, they're not going to want to share their knowledge with me, or, oh, they're going to mislead me. It's like, no, they don't want other people making the same mistakes that they made. Like they want to share it with you.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are afraid of the vulnerability. Like whenever I show up to conferences, I'm usually like more like interested in what does everyone else know that I don't, versus like, how can I show everyone that I'm like a successful person? Because at the end of the day, you show everyone you're a successful person, you get, then you're positioning yourself here as opposed to like everyone being here. And then there's no benefit, like there's no flow of knowledge from those people to you. But then if you go and you position yourself like in the other direction as like vulnerable, like, hey, I don't know this, I don't know that, I don't know this. And you put it out, like you just straight up put it out. You're like, hey, I don't know, anything about trademarks. Can someone help me? And next thing you know, like you leave that conference or event with all like information flowing to you instead of the opposite. So I think I've seen a lot of people that like they'll show up to events and or meetups or whatever, and kind of very like they keep things under wraps just so that, they're kind of afraid that people will like judge them and say, oh, like they're not doing that well. For me, it's the opposite. I'm like, judge me, whatever. If I get that information, that knowledge, that's benefiting my business. At the end of the day, that's what really matters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, no, definitely. But going back a bit to your supply chain, one thing I did also find interesting is that your take on protection, which is very different than a lot of coaches and courses that will say, this is a 1 agreement. This is how you're going to use it. If they don't sign it, you're not going to work with them, sort of thing. Yeah. How did you learn that an NDA, I mean, pretty much can't be enforced? 1 agreements still, it's going to be very hard to enforce unless you're working with a lot of inventory. It's good. It's almost impossible. And unless you have the capital behind it. But how did you learn that, an NDA is kind of more of a formality than anything?
I mean, I don't know. I think maybe it's because I come from Egypt, right? And in Egypt, like you can sign whatever document, and then they'll tell you, okay, good luck. Like, like sue me. Let's see how that goes. And I think it's probably because I came from there. Like I've seen it. Like my dad like signed so many agreements, and he's gotten screwed over there. And I would call him and be like, dude, like what's going on? Like, sue them. He's like, good luck. Like, what justice system in Egypt do we have? Right? It's like all messed up. And so kind of like just knowing that, I'm like, yeah, China's very similar. It's a third world, or not third world, but it's like, it's very similar in like that sense. And I'm like, yeah, like I thought about it logically. I said, let me have them sign an NDA. Let me have them sign an agreement, all of this stuff. Then I thought about it. If it was someone in Egypt, they'd sign all this stuff and then they just like throw it in the trash because they know they're not going to follow. They're going to do whatever they want anyways. And so for me, I always looked at it from a point of leverage. It's like, how can I always have leverage and assume that the person in front of me is going, like when it's in a situation like that, person in front of me has the opportunity to screw me over. So with that, it's like, okay, trade assurance. I'll always use trade assurance if I'm going through Alibaba. I'll never just do a direct wire or anything like that, where it's like put myself in a vulnerable position where, okay, I sent them the money, because a lot of them, they'll say, okay, send us the down payment. You send them the down payment. Thank you. We got paid. Have a good day. They don't want the full amount. Even if the down payment is $1,000, like they could do this, 50 times a month. That's 50 grand a month. Amazing. And they're scamming people. So I always look at it from that perspective. And I think a lot of it really comes back to Egypt and how things are done there. Is a lot of scamming, a lot of swindling. And it's just like, how can I always have the leverage? And I take that in any part of my business. Is like, how can I always have the leverage where, if that person in front of me just decides one day to not honor agreement or whatever, how can I still have the leverage? And as long as I keep that in mind and build everything, agreement or not, law, follow the law or not follow the law, because if you think about it, let's say us, we enter in an agreement and it's a very clear statement and you guys breach the agreement. I have to hire a lawyer. We have to go to court. There's going to be here, whatever, all this stuff. That's time that's lost, money that's lost. I don't know, what if you guys don't even have any assets or anything? Like, how am I going to get my money back? So I always kind of just assume whatever contract you have, all that kind of stuff, it's not enforceable. And that puts me in a position to always have leverage no matter what. And there's always a way. Sometimes there's if you're at a point where there's absolutely no way, you have to take a risk. And that's kind of part of entrepreneurship. But the times that I take a risk is I really get to know the person very, very, very well, and interview people they've worked with and all that kind of stuff to make sure. And I always ask for references. So whenever working with anyone in China, I'm like, I need 3 references. And if they say no, we can't give you references, I'm like, that sounds shady. There has to be at least 3 customers in the US that are very happy with your work. And if you don't have that, then, you're not good enough. And most of the ones that are very legit are like, yeah, sure, contact these 3 people. And, you talk to them, they're like, yeah, we've been working with them for a year. They're super good. The communication is good. And the ones that are kind of shady usually turn out to be trading companies and not actually manufacturing facilities and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I mean, references is very common. We work with some wholesalers at Noviland, and that's the first thing that they even ask for. It's, hey, give me 3 references, at the very least, 3 references of companies that are around my size. I don't want someone that, just started a business and their reference. It's almost like asking your friend to give you a reference.
Yeah.
But someone around my size is very, very common. And most factories will have a few references, or it might take them a day or 2 and they can ask their current customers, hey, do you mind if I, toss you on a sheet of paper? They might contact you, they might not, but no, that's interesting. What do you do to sort of develop those relationships with your factories, with your suppliers?
Yeah, so that's a good question, right? And so I'll give you actually a little bit about how good my relationship is, at least with my manufacturer, right? I get like 7-day like lead times. I've had emergency like 3-day production runs. So the way that I get and people are always like, man, like, you know, you have like such an amazing cash flow cycle. But I think the reason that I'm able to get like such good terms is it's really like a human relationship. So like the same relationship between you guys, both of you, like you've developed that relationship over time. I'm sure you talk and you're nice. You say, you know, how's your day? This, you know, when it's each other's birthdays, you say happy birthday. So it's almost the same thing, right? At the end of the day, like we're all people. We're all people. Like, you know, my business doesn't define who I am. This guy's manufacturing facility or his job doesn't define who he is. You know, at the core, they're just a person. And if you met that person in the street and you wanted to become a friend of that person, how do you go about that? And that's how I go about like building those relationships. I mean, at the end of the day, you're gonna have to maybe spend, you know, with that person a certain amount of money before they're like, okay, we get it. But let me tell you this: you will, like, most rules like are bendable. Like, especially like a manufacturing facility can come tell you like, oh, it's 6-week lead time. But if you understand, and for me, that's you know, where I'm very blessed to have like my manufacturing background. I understand the manufacturing and the times. And so I know that it takes 1 day. It's like a 1-day manufacturing cycle. So knowing that, I know that, okay, I don't need 6 weeks. 6 weeks is just me being put in a queue. So if, you know, it was like if I owned a manufacturing facility and it was my sister who came to me and said, Mina, I really need this. Yeah, you know, I'll give it to her in a couple of days, right? Because she's my sister. So, you know, with that logic, how can I do that with, you know, with a manufacturing facility? So step number one is, okay, I understand the ability, like what's possible, right? And I know if you don't understand your exact like manufacturing process, I highly recommend you do. Just go, you know, dive deep, whether you have to travel or whatever. Understand every single part, so you know, okay, here's the limitations, and here's actually like if you own the facility, how long would it actually take? And say, okay, so it takes like 3 days. So my goal is like, let's get to 14 days. And then let's develop that relationship with the person where the rules become so bendable that, you know, they'll kind of sneak you in to the front of the line because they really like you. And everyone does that. Like all of us here are definitely like, you know, if you're busy or whatever, and you know your significant other comes and asks you for something, you will put them in the front of the line. And that's how, you know, it works. That's how humans work. And so, you know, birthdays, I'm always like the first to call, hey, happy birthday, da da da. I'm regularly, like every week, I know their kids' names, I know their significant others' names, like, you know, husbands, wives. I know, you know, everything. I know what events are happening. I send them like, so for example, like if they're like, let's say Muslim, which one of my manufacturers is, when they have like all their like Muslim holidays, hey, you know, I call them, I send them like a little gift basket. So it's like those things where it's like, man, like this person is so thoughtful. He constantly thinks about me, and it doesn't take a lot. I guess it's just small gestures to show like we're friends. Like I care about you. Like, you know, this is not just business. And once you develop that personal relationship, and a lot of times just picking up the phone, how's it going? And like you vent and he vents and kind of stuff like that. Eventually you get to a point, and obviously, like I said, you know, you're probably gonna have to spend a little bit of money. So the person is like, okay, this is not just like a one-time, you know, you can get so far on your first time. So, and I've gotten like pretty far on my first time, especially meeting people in person, wining, dining them, all that kind of stuff. You'll get to a certain point, but after spending money and doing business with a person regularly while nurturing that relationship, you'll be super surprised like how much you can push the envelope of like what's possible. And you know, and I still remember to this day, like when I worked in the new product development, it was like a massive, like it's a $30 billion company. And you know, there was like the few people like where this guy called Bruce, right? And Bruce, you know, whenever you needed something and everyone would tell you, no, it's impossible, you would go to Bruce. And then because Bruce had such a good relationships with everyone, Bruce would go and say, hey man, like, come on, like we really need this. and like there was like certain things, for example, like you had to sanitize. I have to go through like a tumbling cycle, and everyone knew the sanitization machines were so backed up, like weeks and weeks, and you go put in an order for your stuff to get sanitized and you just wait. And Bruce would always like be able to sneak his way in, just because he was like been with the company for like 25 years. Like I think he like got out of college and got in there. So, and that's like the power of relationships. So I always understood like everything can be bent, especially when you have like really good relationships.
And so I'm thinking about like how, you know, you had said like, you know, you can get kind of like the friends and family push of like, you know, getting to the top of the line and things like that. And you're in a super, super niche product category with it being supplements, because you're not working with, you know, when you're talking about the actual supplement itself, like your electrolyte blend, like you said, you're not working with a factory that's making like toasters and waffle irons and all these other things. They're like all just making supplements. But then I was thinking, I was like, what are the other like I can't even think like certifications and like approvals like that you have to have, and you know, how are you certifying that these are within these, what is the word I'm thinking of, requirements, compliance? Yeah, like how are you like making sure that they're like compliant with all the stuff? Because like any of the consumables, anything that you're putting into your body has to be so regulated, it seems. How are you confirming the legitimacy of that stuff?
Yeah. So first thing is doing like a factory inspection. So with my first guy, I didn't do any of that. And, you know, obviously after talking to a few people who were, you know, a lot bigger in the industry, I was like, okay, it's a big mistake to not, you know, do any checks and kind of just blindly accept the quality of these products. So the first thing is to do like a factory inspection. And there's many companies out there that are certified in going and checking if a company is following good manufacturing practices, if they're NSF certified, all of that kind of stuff. So it costs a little bit upfront, but then it's just like a one-day trip. You can find someone close to your factory. They'll drive up, they'll check out the factory, make sure everything's being done according to practices and all that. Now, the day-to-day, right? So if they're following these practices, that's fine. But you know, what if like one day they just don't follow the practice? That's gonna always fall back on, you know, how much do you trust that manufacturer? Because at the end of the day, you know, any of us could put up a really nice front, we're following the rules, everything is amazing, and then, you know, behind closed doors we're kind of like cutting corners and things like that. So you know, you just have to really like trust that the manufacturer is doing a good job after inspecting them. And then at the end of every single batch, and this is batch specific, I always test. So no matter how much you trust the manufacturer, always test, because sometimes it's not the manufacturer. Sometimes it's, you know, this guy was fighting with his wife and he was up late and he's like, you know, I'm tired, and just like kind of cuts corners, right? So the inspection is not to kind of, you know, insult anyone and say, hey, like, I don't trust that your stuff is good. It's just like, this is like an additional layer of, you know, quality assurance and quality control. And so every single batch, it's as simple as, and you have to actually create your requirements. So for me, I don't do like testing. I do testing every maybe once a quarter. I'll take random batches and I'll test at a lab. So that costs like about, you know, $1,500, not too bad. And then after every single batch, I'll have someone drive up and it'll open the boxes at random. I follow like the military spec for quality control. It basically tells you based on how many units you have and what your tolerance is, how many units to inspect and check and stuff like that. And I have a very detailed, and I created this, right? A very detailed guide on every single thing that I want them to check. So it goes from like scratching the label, drop test, you know, checking the seals, opening it up, checking that seal. What else? Flavor. I have them like a smell check and a taste check and everything. So, and no one's gonna kind of tell you like, here's the supplement guidelines on maybe if you talk to someone who already has it, they can give you some advice. But what I would say is, if you're a customer and you got a supplement, what are all the things that you would be unhappy about. So obviously, aside from things being, clean, that's a very visual, like simply a visual thing. Like, how's the area where they're stored? How's the factory look? If the factory is all messed up, then there might be an issue there. But if everything looks clean, that's fine. Then it goes to, as a customer, if I got this product in my hand and I opened it and I looked at it, what are all the things that I can post on Instagram and say, this company sucks? Oh, the seal was broken, company sucks. The scoop was missing, company sucks. This tastes bad, company sucks. It smells bad, all of this stuff. So I kind of make a list of everything that a customer could kind of think of to say that this is a bad experience. And I make sure that the random units out of random boxes are checked.
And you had answered my follow-up question within your answer, which was like, how are you like testing a supplement? Because you can't be like, okay, waffle iron cuts on, makes a waffle and you're good. It's like, how do you know like how much of the blend is in there if they did it right? But you said you send it off to a lab, so I assume that they break down the components of it or something.
Yeah, once a quarter, and it's pretty much there's like a sheet, kind of like an ingredient list, like a recipe list that you send to the lab, and you say, I want you to take these samples and this list and cross-check and make sure that it's the same. So it says on the label that there's 375 milligrams of sodium citrate. Just make sure that there's 375 milligrams of sodium citrate. And that's kind of how they go about it.
Gotcha.
And have you expanded outside of supplements? Or, I mean, I'm guessing it's more than just the electrolyte supplement, right?
This is a good learning lesson for everyone. So initially when I started on Amazon, I had like the electrolyte supplements, hard work, and that's kind of my main bread and butter. I grew that, and then one day my best seller got taken down. And I felt very, very vulnerable because I lost, the majority of my income. Now it's a little bit better because, the income is a little bit more distributed. But when I lost that, I said, I need to diversify. So instead of diversifying my sales channels, I thought it would be better to diversify, product wise. So I diversified, I launched more products. But then I said, what's even better? Let me launch more brands. So I launched a women's brand. I launched like a hangover cure. I launched my most recent one is a nootropic coffee alternative. So I launched like a few other brands, and then I started realizing that this was taking away. My time was, the amount of effort was required to launch new supplements was way, way, way higher than to kind of focus on launching maybe more sales channels for my existing ones. So I launched more supplements or more brands. And then I kind of learned that lesson. It was like, next thing you know, I was spending so much time because the launch is like, it's the takeoff, right? It's the hardest. It's like a lot of energy required just to get it off the ground. And then, once you're off the ground, it's like you can add a little bit at a time. But just the initial launch was taking so much. So I found myself like not spending enough time on my main brand, and that started suffering, and I was spending too much time on the other brands. So then I kind of pulled everything back and I said, listen, I have a great team now. So the team allows me to kind of pull off and say, guys, here's I just want to spend 1 hour, 2 hours a week. We go over these other brands, what needs to happen to get it, 1% better. And let's move on that. And my main focus went back to MMA Nutrition because that's like kind of the big brand. And then from there, I said, okay, maybe, if I got hurt by Amazon, because they took my product down, there's ways to kind of mitigate that. So whether it's backup accounts or diversifying my sales channels. So, I'm going direct to consumer now, and that's been going really well. But again, I don't want to fall in that same, hole of like, I'm running only Facebook ads, and that's how my direct-to-consumer business is running. So it's like Facebook ads, Google ads, maybe Instagram influencers, all the different ways, Google SEO. So just diversifying my traffic and my sales channels for that one product. And I feel like that's a lot better because when it's all in one brand, the return on investment on my time is way higher than trying to, have 5 mediocre brands instead of one really good brand that's diversified in terms of sales channels. And so, after talking to a lot of people, they said, yeah, well, we're all vulnerable if you're depending on dependent on like Amazon.com only. And everyone's almost been in kind of the same position where they were dependent on like Facebook ads only. And, iOS hit them or whatever, something changed. And then their sales all went down and they're like, okay, now we need to diversify. Unfortunately, because I had like I have a good background in creating supplements. I love supplements and I have a good relationship with my manufacturer. I said, oh, let me just launch more brands. But I feel like that was a mistake because it was just the amount of effort required to launch a brand is way more than like, maybe launching an additional supplement in my existing brand where you can utilize all of the existing customer data, kind of launch the product to them. So that's kind of the learning lesson that I had with more brands, more supplements.
Yeah. Are you incorporated with like GNC or anything? Like, are you listed with them? Because I know they're like moving, because they're closing a bunch of stores, right? So they're moving like everything to just their site. So, and when I think of like supplements, like I exclusively get my protein from GNC. Like I wouldn't even know where else to go. And that's only because
Amazon.
Well, I guess Amazon. I could go to Amazon, yeah. But I'm so weary of like myself personally, and this is where it comes from the brand owner to like create that trust, right? But like I had a previous coworker, a friend, who started taking this. I don't know what he told her it was for, but started taking this supplement that a guy she was seeing was making in his basement with his friend, and she ended up getting really, really sick. And I'm like, because you can't just take things that people are making in their basement, honey. Like it doesn't work like that. So like for me, just buying from like an independent brand I've never heard of, I would be like a little weary of it. But I guess that's where you have to create kind of that trust and that reputability from a brand perspective. But
that's definitely always going to be a struggle, right? With GNC. So just a fun fact. I know this may be a little bit off topic, but their terms are like pretty aggressive. So I think they have like 60 to 90 days. They pay you 60 to 90 days after your product gets sold. They can advertise. They can lower the price as much as they want. They can also you also have to do free fills. So basically, the first round of like, let's say they order 1,000, you have to give them 1,000 for free in the first run as almost like a free fill. And then you also have to pay for removing someone off. It's like, I think it's called like a stocking fee, where they have to move someone off the shelf to put you on, so you have to pay for that. So it's a very costly process. They also don't accept a lot of people. And so for me, I mean, I know that there's a lot of benefit. Cash flow wise, it would be very tough, for the business, especially with no like raised capital or anything. Maybe after I raise some capital, I'll be able to make a bigger push for physical retail. For now, it's kind of been let's do all like the third party seller platforms like Amazon.com, Walmart.com. If I can get into any other third party seller website, stuff like that, and maybe small retailers. So I've gotten a few retailers in LA, and I think one thing that I messed up is I've taken too long to go from a container to packets. So I'm making a very big push for packets, and I said I figure if I can have a few packets in every single gym or every single small store, eventually it'll add up. It'll add up to like one GNC, for example. And then at the end of the day, there's no guarantees with GNC. So the stuff could move off the shelf. It couldn't move off the shelf. So I'd rather kind of work my way up there instead of saying, okay, let me get all this money, dump it into like a Hail Mary on GNC. And if it doesn't work, I'll be in a really bad position. If I had a lot of capital, it would be okay. But, right now, without raising capital or anything like that, it'll probably be a little bit tight.
Yeah. Are you utilizing influencers at all?
So I was for a while, micro influencers, and it was cool because what we were doing was we were finding these gyms in LA for specific. So my main demographics is CrossFit, cycling, and running. And I would find like a cycling club, and I would hit up 10 people from the cycling club and say, we'll send you a product for free. And then, we'll like, if you like it, just let us know, send us a picture of you with the product. We'll post you, and then hoping that they'll repost or we'll post on the story and they'll repost. And I said, if 10 people from a gym did that, everyone in the gym will know about the name. But what the mistake that I was doing was, in my opinion, was I was just sending them product. And then I think it was my girlfriend that was telling me, she's like, I think the way that you're doing it is pretty boring. Like no one really wants to see that. And she's like a influencer. She has like 20 something thousand followers on Instagram. So she's a small influencer. And she would get like from Four Sigmatic or from Chagachino or whatever. And she would always like open it and see, she's like, look how beautiful this is. And then there's a cup, and then there's this, and then there's cards, and it's all done really nice. And I think that the mistake that I was doing was I wasn't ever sending anyone anything Instagram worthy. I was just sending them free product. And I think there's a big difference between sending free product, because you get the free product, you're like, okay, thanks, and you use it, versus if it's Instagram worthy. So she like gave me the idea. She said, what if you did like a small duffel bag, like a mini duffel bag? It looks like a gym bag. You open it up, and then there's the product, that there's like a bottle, there's a few like cute, like probably you're not going to use them stuff, but it's like Instagram worthy. The whole experience is Instagram worthy. And so I've been working on that, is to come up with something that is way more Instagram worthy than just like, here's a product and can you post about it? Another thing I want to make a push for is like utilizing like TikTok influencers. And I think that, those are cheaper. They have a lot more reach than regular influencers. So I think, that's where I probably like start making a push. I'm still unsure of how to, scale the process of reaching out to them. I don't know. It's not as easy as sliding into DMs, I don't think, but eventually like I'll figure a way out.
I just took a course in TikTok, which is an upsetting sentence as a millennial that I had to have somebody teach me about it. But and I know for you, it would be like free product, but the recommendation that the influencer that was assisting in teaching the course said to start the DM with paid and then give more information about it. So maybe like free product sponsor and then go. Because for some of them, it is as easy as slipping into DMs, I guess. So or sliding into DMs. I don't know.
Yeah, sliding.
Well, I think she said, slipping aside. I think she said comments, right? Didn't?
Well, she said she does get a lot of comments too, and she reads the comments, but to get her attention in the DMs, if it's paid and it's from like an account with a lot, because I guess in TikTok specifically, the ranking of where the DMs are, if you have a higher follower count account, you're higher up in the DMs. Because I guess they do that to suppress like
bots and spammers.
Yeah. I think they do that to suppress that, but they're getting smart. But Instagram, Francois just sent me something. It was funny enough, a TikTok about the Instagram algorithm changing, but they're changing the Instagram algorithm so that it better mirrors TikTok. So, like Instagram on just the Discover, it will show like really high follower count accounts, and TikTok shows you anybody and everybody. It's more or less like by time of post. Instagram is moving more towards that model. So there's going to be a lot more visibility with Instagram.
Because then you probably get a lot more discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
We might have seen the same TikTok.
Yeah.
Well, how do you go about deciding which social media channels, which sales channels even that you want to go to? And that's kind of part of the topic I think that we were going to talk about today, but we did get a little sidetracked. But I mean, that's just, it's important to have those conversations, because you learning that supply chain, you learning how to build those relationships, how to manage quality control, all of that from scratch is 100% something that maybe even someone that's a little bit more experienced in business, but not experienced with the supply chain side, would be interested in. So I do appreciate that. But do you use any tools or, I know I saw you holding up the H10 bottle. What tools do you use to, I guess, acquire some of your data?
So honestly, like my biggest resource has been Reddit and Facebook groups. So Reddit and Facebook groups is like where people are hanging out, and it's been cool to kind of like, I'll jump in the Facebook groups and I'm following like like 10 or 15, or I'm in 10 or 15 like cycling groups, and I'll start talking to the people, and I'll just like have conversations and say, guys, like, where are you guys hanging out? Like, where do you post your stuff? Where's the best forums for cycling? What's this? What's that? And from talking to the people there, Reddit is the same thing. Reddit is like this, it's crazy the amount of stuff. I do a lot of like product research on Reddit and all this kind of stuff because that's where everyone's hanging out and talking for some reason. And you can get a ton of insights on your target demographic. But I'll ask them there. I'll be like, what do you usually follow? Are you listening to any podcasts? Do you get most of your content on Instagram or Facebook or what is it? And they're usually the ones that tell me like, I follow this person, I follow that person, I do this, I do that. And that's kind of how I decide for whatever my target demographic is, which channel to start. So, if it's like cycling or CrossFitters, maybe CrossFitters are following a certain thing more than others. So maybe CrossFitters are more into Instagram and following X, Y, and Z CrossFitters or X, Y, and Z CrossFit pages versus, on Facebook, they're in this, that, and this group. And just being in the group, it's pretty easy to actually like do paid posts. So I've been in a lot of groups where I ask the guys like, hey, can I pay you? I'll send you product and just do like a quick review video on it as like the owner of the group, and post it in the group and say like, hey, I've been approached by someone in the group. They have a product. They asked me to do a review. This is an honest review. And so, that's kind of how I figure out what my sales channels, what my social channels to go to first is I'll just ask the target demographic, like, where are you guys hanging out? Because I don't know. I mean, CrossFitters could be hanging out on Facebook, and then, cyclists could be hanging out more on Instagram, or maybe cyclists get all of their stuff from like cycling clubs. And so there's a lot of cycling clubs, by the way. And so, maybe it's like, okay, maybe I got to go into all of the cycling club groups, and they're like their community. How do I say this? Like, they all kind of follow the same like behavior. Like, all CrossFitters follow the same behavior. Because they're all like doing the same things, and they're watching their friends in CrossFit, and they're following the same thing. So if all their friends are hanging out in one place, they're gonna go hang out in that same place. And so that's how I do my research. Paid, I think Facebook is number one, and even after iOS update, it's still gonna be number one. It's just very, very, very powerful. I would say number two is Google. So Google paid search, it's a very, very good tool to utilize. After that, I'm not sure. I still haven't figured it out, what's better, TikTok or Twitter or whatever. But I know for a fact, like, Facebook's number one, Google's number two.
And Reddit. That's interesting with Reddit.
Reddit.
We've talked about it a few times.
I know we have.
Reddit is the best. So whenever let's say, okay, I decide my next supplement is like a recovery one. Mm-hmm. I go to Reddit right away. I'm like, guys, I go to the cycling, whatever cycling. Guys, what are you taking to recover? Oh, I take HMB. Oh, I take this. Oh, I take that. Oh, I'm doing, I was like, what supplements do you take to recover? And it's always like so many people will go in, and then people will like reply to other people. It just becomes like this crazy thing. And I'll do it across like 10 different like subreddits or whatever. And I get this massive compilation. Here's what my target demographic wants in terms of recovery. And then I'll narrow that down. Because sometimes it's like, for me, okay, recovery, HMB shown in clinical studies to reduce blah, blah, blah. This product, this supplement, that supplement, in clinical studies shown to reduce blah, blah. And so I have like all this science, but science is not sexy. Like, there's a lot of things like, that's science that's like, yeah, this is good for you, but like, who cares? Because you don't know about it. But then you could, you and your friends could be like, yeah, 100% glutamine is the number one recovery thing. So if you tell me glutamine is the number one recovery thing, I have to put it in there, even though in my opinion, there's like 5 other things that will improve your recovery better. Mm-hmm. If everyone is saying glutamine, I'm putting glutamine in there. So it used to be, my process used to be simply find the best, ingredients that are clinically backed to give the result that we're looking for. And then it became find that plus what's everyone saying it needs to be in there. And then it becomes like a combination, because I still, obviously, I need something that's effective, that works. Because if you believe that it's glutamine, right, and then I put glutamine plus HMB, which I know according to clinical studies and, you know, testing on myself, that's what's driving the recovery, then it's like, okay, I'll put glutamine and I'll put HMB. You'll take the glutamine because you believe it, and then the HMB will work, and then you'll get an amazing result, and you'll be like, yeah, this product works. So yeah, Reddit is incredible. I would suggest, and Facebook groups, and it's like where it's the easiest way to, you know, buy like niche and target demographic. Find those people who are talking and then ask them questions. And so many times I've posted my products on there. I said, guys, what do you think? Like, it's super like transparent. Like, guys, I'm making a product that, you know, that helps better recovery or whatever. It's, you know, improves endurance. This is what it looks like right now. What's missing, do you think? Like, you know, do I need to add anything? Do I need to take away anything? A lot of people are like, oh no, like I'd rather have like 5 grams of sugar than sucralose in there. And I'm like, okay, noted. You know, people would rather have some carbs versus you know, an artificial sweetener, for example. Like, there was this one product where the target demographic was mainly women. And I went into these groups and subreddit and you know, asked so many women. I was like, would you rather have 5 grams of organic cane sugar or a tiny amount of sucralose? And, you know, I think it was like 70% wanted the cane sugar. And so that's what we went with. So a lot of times I think I see people, they'll come up with the product and then they'll try and sell you. And I used to be like that too, right? I came up with the product and then I tried to sell you. Now it's like, I'm like, what do you want? And then it's like, oh, I have a product for it, by the way, which is exactly what you want. Because I kind of reverse engineer. There's obviously always stems with a solution to a problem, but then the details of that solution is, what do you want to see in that solution? What are you not seeing in other products? And obviously a lot of like looking at negative reviews and things like that gives a lot of insight too.
Definitely. Well, yeah. And thank you for sharing all of your insights with our listeners today. If they have any questions about what you shared today, where can they get a hold of you and learn more about just your journey and your company?
So Facebook or Instagram. My Facebook is Mina Elias, and my Instagram is at Egyptian_prescription_Elias. So any of those, I'm super accessible. Ask me questions. And yeah, I mean, on Instagram, I'm not really posting a lot of like business stuff. But you know, on Facebook, it's there. You'll see a lot of like the mistakes that I make and all that kind of stuff. I post everything just so people don't have to like go through all the struggles that I'm going through. I'm like a very fail fast type of person, so I make a lot of mistakes. You'll learn a lot.
Very transparent, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Mina, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely wonderful. And if you guys liked what you saw today, please be sure to give us a like, comment, and share. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, ring that bell for notifications. And, you know, that way you never miss out on a conversation with leaders in supply chain and e-commerce like Mina Elias. Mina, thank you again so much, dear.
Thank you, guys.